But all of a sudden, I wasn't swimming in water anymore. I was swimming in space. And I could see what was like, the central divine source, God, creator, whatever. And it just looked like this huge, bright light. And it almost looked like it was breathing, where it was, it was like all these souls would come out in like an exhale, and you could feel the energy of it. But then there'd be an inhale where some of the souls would go back in, and then there'd be another exhale, and even more souls would come out.
I'm here today with Susan Walter. Susan is an intuitive visionary artist and angelic warrior. After near death experiences as a child, Susan was given the ability to see into the angelic realms, allowing her to see the angels in their pure light form. She uses this ability to draw your angel's portrait and relay messages and insights from your angels. Susan, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really blessed to be able to spend this time with you.
I think it's an honor to be on your show. I've listened to a couple of your shows, and yeah, just enjoyed hearing the stories and hearing, ask a couple of interesting questions and some of the ones I listened to. So I thought that was kind of fun too.
Well, the honor is all mine for sure. I'm really excited to spend this time with you and hear about your experiences. So, you had a couple near death experiences as a child, if you want to start there.
Yeah, I had two. The first one at the age of 4. It starts out, I remember laying on the couch in the farmhouse where we were living at the time, and it was because the way I was dressed, I know it was summertime, as I was just in a very lightweight dress, but on top of me, mom had put a blanket on me, and that blanket felt so heavy I couldn't move it. Um, and it was at a time when the doctor actually still came, made house visits in the rural area where I was at. So the doctor came and examined me. And then I remember watching my parents go to the next room as they were talking about if I was going to go to the University of Iowa Hospital, which was almost an hour away, or if we were going to the local hospital that was more like 10 to 15 minutes. And I followed them in this conversation, but looking down on them from like up in the corner of the room. And then, as then I remember hearing them make the decision that the doctor, in his opinion, we needed to get me into surgery immediately. So we were going to the local hospital. And then from there, I'm gone. I go to this beautiful, beautiful garden with these just massive trees that I'd never seen the redwoods at that time, but now looking back, I would equate them to that size. And underneath one of the trees were three beings that I immediately recognized as my angels. And and it's almost like there was an embrace at that point. But the garden, it was just everything just glowed and sparkled. And there was like wildflowers everywhere. There were, like little baby animals. They were all young. And and I was used to, as a kid, going around the farm, and if there was a nest of snakes or rabbits or mice or whatever, I would just gently play with them and then put them back exactly where I found them. And growing up on a hog farm, and my uncle down the road had cattle. I was used to being around animals all the time. So that, and it was almost like I remember a very brief conversation with my angels, but I don't remember any details of what it was about. But they had then asked me if I wanted to see the world through the eyes of the animals. So I just kind of went from animal to animal, from their perspective. But I stayed in this experience and animals I was familiar with. And then I don't really, the next thing I know, I'm waking up in the hospital. and recovering from surgery. And I don't really remember, waking up, but yeah, I was 4. We don't remember a lot of things from when we were that age. Um, and then, yeah, the experience at 6 was a little different, but not a lot. I don't remember the details leading up to it. But again, it was the exact same experience where um, I had, it was another ruptured hernia. Um, so again, going in for surgery very quickly, but yeah, I just immediately found myself back in the same garden, with the same 3 beings. And this time, because had been I was old enough now, I was going to Sunday school, and I grew up in a Lutheran church, Lutheran Missouri Synod. So, pretty much just take all the Catholic beliefs, but take away all the pretty stuff. That's kind of what it was from my perspective anyway. But anyway, and this time I was asking questions about the stuff I was being taught in Sunday school because there was things that just didn't make sense to me. And I don't remember all the questions I asked, but I do very specifically remember asking how long God's day was. 'Cause it just didn't make sense to me as a little kid that this massive being that encompassed everything, that their day was the same size as ours because we were little. It's and I remember after that, I would, ask that question in Sunday school a lot, and I'd get in trouble because the teacher didn't have the answer. But yeah, and then again, I was, asked if, I wanted to see the world through the eyes of the animals again, because it was just like they were occupying me while my body was going through these painful experiences. But this time I went, experienced more at different animals. And even this time found myself swimming. Yeah, and I remember it felt like I was just in this huge, massive body. Probably a whale or something way larger than I was, had experienced. But all of a sudden, I wasn't swimming in water anymore. I was swimming in space, and I could see what was like, the central divine source, God, creator, whatever, and it just looked like this huge bright light. But and it almost looked like it was breathing, where it was, it was like all these souls would come out in like an exhale, and you could feel the energy of it. But then there'd be an inhale where some of the souls would go back in, and then there'd be another exhale, and even more souls would come out. And that's the best way I can describe it. It was a release of all this, just energy, and it was really overwhelming. But then from there, they actually showed where I was from one of those first, my soul was from one of those first exhales. And they showed that my soul and 2 others were like pulled aside. Because it's like every soul was going to the angelic realms, angelic frequencies. And it was almost like seeing, the best way I can describe it is like it, in the Bible, it talks about the many mansions, and that's almost what it looked like. It was just like, but there wasn't, everything was open, there wasn't walls, but there was like different colors and different frequencies. There's a bet I don't really know how to describe it, but we were all going, every soul was going to those different areas and different frequencies and different colors. But me and the 2 others that were pulled aside, we were asked if we wanted to become what they could use this term planet creators. I'm still trying to wrap my head around what that means. But and then there was like this screen, and they showed us what it'd be like if we did, and what it'd be like if we did not. And 2 of those, the other 2 souls that were experiencing this with me, they did go on to the angelic realms. I obviously did not. From there, though, I was taken to, it was a kind of training. I wouldn't describe it as a school because when we think of schools, we think of classrooms and desks and having to sit and be restricted, but this was not. And a lot of it was about, seemed to be about working with energy and playing with light is the best way I can describe it. And there was, I remember there being a number of other different beings there with me in the same training. And a lot of them would be religious figures that we remember or that we know of, but even more ones we don't even know of because they didn't even seem to be all probably what we would think of as human in human form. They were, in all different, and some of them didn't even have what we would call a shape. They were just like beings of light, and maybe I was too. I don't know, but yeah. And then all of a sudden, the next thing I really remember is waking up in the hospital room, and one of my grandmothers is sitting there at my bedside, and she doesn't yet know that, I'm just starting to wake up. And I look over and she is reading what I remember seeing her read this magazine all the time. And she had a very large collection of them because I remember playing with them as a kid and loving them too. It was National Geographic. And of the one she was reading at the time had the Giza Plateau and the three pyramids on the front of it. And she realized I was awake when I asked her, well, where's the rest of them? Because a part of me just knew there were more than the three right there on the plateau. And and it's interesting that even just here, I think it was in the news 3 or 4 years ago, found this article and I wished I'd saved it, but and where they found foundations for more pyramids and more temples that they didn't know about previously, kind of on the back, I believe it's west side, on the opposite side from the Sphinx.
What a validating experience for you, even if you just thought maybe it was a dream. And then,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I knew it was more than a dream, but as a kid, I really, really struggled to explain to my parents what I'd experienced. Because, I was like a little kid. I didn't have the vocabulary, number one. And the term near death experience didn't exist for another 10 or 15 years, even if I would have heard it, at that age. So, I really, and I remember at a certain age, I think it was probably about a year or so after the second experience, my dad just told me to quit telling those stories. So I quit telling the stories, but I didn't quit seeing my angels because I continued seeing them, the three of them, and then eventually even more around me all the time. But it wasn't until I was in my 30s when I started seeing everybody else's. So those, for the many years, I just saw my own.
So, what is it like for you when you go out in public? Are you seeing people with angels trailing behind them everywhere? Or tell me about that.
Yeah, at first I did, and I remember, and at the time I was a stay-at-home mom because I had two teenage boys and I also had two toddlers. So I was kind of a busy mom, but I remember. Yeah, I remember kind of feeling more angels around me, but just around my husband and at the time and my children, didn't really think much of it. But when I went to the grocery store, I literally got so overwhelmed, I left the grocery cart in the middle of the aisle and went back home. And the first thing I did, was the first time I was able to, I sat down because I was, I already had a meditation practice at that point. It was like, okay, what the heck's going on here? When am I supposed to do this? And they were very insistent that it seemed to be you find a way for me to show others what I was seeing. And I just go, why me? There's got to be somebody better for doing this, and asking all these questions. I think any of us would. And then I also had one other kind of block. I had always been interested in being an artist, but I had no skills. Yeah, I remember having a high school art teacher telling me not to bother. Yeah, I had no artistic skills at all. But yeah, but they just kept pushing me. And is where I eventually did. But as far as being in public, eventually I kind of had to learn how to turn the volume down. It's what I think of it, where I see like spheres of color and they can be all different sizes, but each of the spheres seems to have like glitter that's just constantly moving in it. And then when I set with someone, whether it's in person or via Zoom, or even from a photograph, um, it's just like then just one will step forward and take shape and define color for me. So it's totally up to them as to which one, they show me.
You were talking about the frequency. And so instead, first, let me say I've heard that a lot about near death experiences, that it's more of a frequency than a place. Is that what you also
Mhm.
experienced?
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know, as humans, we tend to use the words, higher and lower as to describe frequencies. I don't think that describes it. I think really fast or slower would be a better description because one's not better than another. It's just different. But, you know, one of the things I've been shown and learned over the years is, yeah, everything vibrates at a frequency. An atom is an atom. It's all what frequency it vibrates at. There's no difference as far as the construct of an atom in the, in our heart or in the floor that that we're standing on. It's all what frequency it's vibrating at. And I think frequency has a lot to do with, where our mindset is. The words we speak have a frequency to them. Even the fabrics that we wear have a frequency to them. Everything does. It's just what we choose to have around us.
The place that you went to, did it feel like a physical place?
It seemed like everything was made out of light because a lot of it was transparent too. You could see through it. And that's why it's so hard to describe because there was just so many layers to it. Yeah. And now one of my corporate jobs that I had over the years was I was a web designer and developer. So I used Photoshop a lot. And now, and that's why I use the term layers because in Photoshop, you can have multiple layers that you stack on top of each other. And that's the best way I could, it's like everything is just, even now, when I see angels, it's like seeing that ray of sunshine between the clouds. It's that transparent.
How did it feel when you were over on the other side? Did you have any emotions or sensations?
Oh, um, it was kind of overwhelming, but it was very accepting. There didn't seem to be any what we would think of as judgment at all. Everything was just totally accepting. I felt very safe, very comfortable.
In today's society, especially I think here in the States, and I live here in the States, so I'm not sure what it's like, in other countries, but here in the States, there's a kind of tradition, I say, that um, when you die, in our religious beliefs, when you
Mm.
die, that there's going to be an eternal damnation for some people. And then some people are chosen to go and live with God in heaven. Is that something that you experienced?
I would, from my perspective and what they have continued to teach me and show me, because it's like, I'm still learning, but it's like the only person judging us will be us. And it'll be more like, oh, I wanted to learn this. I wanted to learn this lesson or have this experience and I didn't. So it's like we'll want to go back, and for that reason, we're going to come back into human form so we can go experience that thing or learn that lesson that we didn't. But it's nobody's going to be giving us a grade or giving or judging us that, if we didn't, nobody but us. Yeah, but we're going to kind of feel like, the best way I can describe it, and I think I said this to you earlier off screen, is like a kid in a candy store when we have all these things that we want to experience, and it's like, "Oh, I didn't do this one," or I experienced it from this point of view, and now I wanna go experience it from this opposite point of view. Yeah, and there's not a good or bad to it. It's just we want to experience all these different things.
And you were told not to talk about the story after a point in time. I feel like a lot of children are told that by their parents, a lot of experiencers that I've spoken with. And I think there's a lot of fear surrounding it. Um,
Mhm.
but also just the fact that it doesn't fit into society and you might be
Yeah.
thought of as strange or weird or whatever else. How did you integrate this experience into your life since you had it at such a young age? Did that shape the entire rest of your life?
It has, but I know for many years, I think I tried to, after hearing my dad tell me to quit telling the stories, it's like I just quit talking about that. And I pretty much tried to lead a normal life until I was really, and I didn't share anything with anybody, not even, my husbands, my children, anything. Yeah, and I say husbands because I was married twice, but I just didn't share that until I think I was in my mid 30s. And then even then, I didn't talk about my near-death experience, and I didn't even make this connection until a few weeks ago. I would say I'd had a near-death experience, but I didn't talk about it all until after my dad passed. And he passed in 2008, in the December of 2018. And it was more like in 2020 was when really started talking about my experience.
Do you think that was because he had asked you to not talk about it?
I think, yeah, I was. I still have that ingrained in my head somewhere.
Wow.
One of my biggest things now for me about sharing my experience is in the hopes that other parents allow their children, and even if they don't understand, find someone else to help them understand when children are talking about having these experiences. Because I think it disconnected me from my spiritual beliefs for a long time.
I think it's important, yes, to support our children if
Mhm.
they have an experience like this. And I think that the world is changing as well. Like you said, it
It
was before the near death experience term was
Mhm,
even coined. And since the 70s, maybe the 60s, with the peace love culture,
mhm,
we've been seeing it an increase in more acceptance and experiences in general and people coming out and talking about them. And they seem to be accelerating the closer, I guess in the past decade at least. Have you found the
yeah,
same?
it's just the more and more people that are sharing their experiences, and there's a number of books, out there, and different podcasters like you talking to people, and there's even an organization here in the States, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the full name of it right now, that's just for near-death experiencers.
Is it
Yeah.
IANS, the International
Yes,
Association of Near Death
yes,
Studies? Yes.
the International New Age, or near death experience, I
Yep.
don't remember what
Yeah.
IN stands for, sorry. But yeah, and even now I've been, involved with a book myself where, 14 different near death experiencers each wrote a chapter about their experience.
Is that book out? Has it been released?
Yeah, I think it was just released on Amazon last week.
I want to talk about the angels, and you're able to communicate with your angels now still.
Yes.
Do you kind of feel like you have one foot in that realm and one foot in this realm, and you can kind of go back and forth?
Now I do, especially now, the last 10 years where I've been able to focus full time on doing, on doing the angel portraits and the other artwork that I do as well. But I actually have a couple of, now these are, prints of the drawing, but this is how I see them. This is Archangel Michael.
I was hoping you were going to share some art.
Yeah, and then see, I also have, this is another one many people are familiar with, Archangel Raphael.
It's beautiful.
Eh, Yeah, and it's like, I know one time I was, sometimes I'll do the like metaphysical, psychic type fairs and travel around doing those a little bit. And I was in an event in, I believe it was Ohio, where I saw another lady, she was doing what she also called angel portraits, and she did these stunning drawings of, but it was like from, the shoulders up, and she did these beautiful, beautiful faces. I was like, oh, why don't I get to see faces? Because I never have, even in my NDE, I didn't see faces. And I was told it's because I see them in more their pure light form, because the more physical they need to, they become, where they actually show a face or even, take on a human, form, that takes a lot of energy for them to do that. And so, the more their pure light form. So I think even the shape, the spheres I talked about earlier is really more even their natural state. I think even taking on these forms takes some, a little bit of effort to do.
And are these two of your angels, or are your angels
No,
different?
just these are actual archangels.
Okay.
Yeah, and which there are way, there's a few spoken about in the Bible, and some of the other faiths talk about different ones, but that it goes beyond that. There's so many angels. I think there could be literally enough angels for every blade of grass on the planet. There are, and with people, everybody has minimum three.
And you
Yeah.
have they're a color. I think Michael was blue and Raphael
Hmm.
was green. Does
Yeah,
that
he's more green,
symbolize?
but he also had a little bit of purple too.
Mm. Is there a symbolic meaning to the colors?
Yes, there is. Because it has to do with kind of what frequency they are vibrating at, because colors are also a frequency. And I'm going to be honest, I intentionally do not remember what the colors mean, because when I'm sitting with someone and drawing their portrait, I don't want to, you know, insinuate anything or assume anything about anybody. Because, there are times where I'll have, be drawing an angel portrait for somebody I know personally, or someone will come to me, more than once and have multiple angels drawn. So, I don't want to, put that human perspective and that human filter on it. Um, so when I do a portrait for them, they get a printout of what the colors mean, but it is on my website.
Okay. And I'll link your website down below too. We'll talk about that in a minute. Um, how do you feel this changed you from the day before you had your near-death experience to the day after?
To be honest, because I was so young, I'm not sure how much it really changed my perspective as a child, but I know it sure hasn't as an adult, as I've looked back. And the more I've talked about my NDE, the more details that I remember. Because I had like put it in the, kind of put it in a box on a shelf, in my mind for so many years. The more I talk about it, the more I remember.
Do you have do you continue to have experiences to this day besides just your angels?
Particularly in meditation, yes, definitely. Yeah, and since I'm able to spend, my full my whole life now seems to be revolve around my spiritual experiences and either sharing them or painting them or drawing them in some way. Yeah, it's like, that feeling, when we were in church as a kid, I remember having kind of, that feeling of being around that energy. And to me, it's now like I'm in that all the time. Because there's so much more to our world than what we can see with our physical eyes.
So going back to the frequency and talking about our world right now, this is just a frequency. It's all right here, right now. It's just the
Mm.
vibration that we're, I guess, the rate of vibration, correct?
Yeah, it's like there's an acceleration taking place on our planet right now, and we're all being affected by it. Yeah, and from the studies, that I have learned, both from reading, because I am an avid reader, and for what I've, been shown and guided through with my personal guides and my angels, it's like we're going through this photonic cloud right now. And science is actually now even starting to prove this. And photons are an intense type of light. That so and as this, we move through this, it's not just our planet, it's actually our whole solar system is being affected by this. So that's why we're having so much more solar activity right now. Yeah, even 3, 4 days ago, we had an X-class flare, which for those that don't know, when CMEs or coronal mass ejections are when the sun releases massive amounts of plasma. And there's 3 different levels. There's C for common, M for kind of medium, and X for extra is the way I think of it. And and it's kind of like, how when grading and say an earthquake, there's, a 6 isn't just a 3 multiplied. It's, or doubled, it's multiplied. Solar flares are the same way. Yeah, and then all that energy coming to our planet affects our magnetosphere. It can affect earthquakes. It can affect our weather. And that's why we're having unusual weather patterns right now. And like here where I live in Kansas City, 2 days ago it was 70 degrees and now it's 30 degrees. It's all over the place.
Can these energies also affect us?
Yes, because it affects our magnetosphere. It affects, even how our brain works and how our brain functions. It's affecting our sleep patterns, affecting everything. I've been talking to other people, in my community, even, how some nights we're really struggling to get a decent night's sleep. And then we'll have 2 days, that's all we want to do is sleep.
These energies, these photons that we're moving through, is that something that is, well, you said that we're going through an increase in vibration, and it's
Yeah,
because due to it. So these X flares or M or C, do those also contribute to the raising of the vibration of the planet?
definitely. Yeah. Yeah, and it's like the spiritual awakening that's taking place on our planet right now. So many people are, first, because for so long, so many people were, yeah, like, with, death itself, with that, what that is, it's like, and we were, so many people thought, well, when you die, there's nothing. Well, the more people we have talking about near-death experiences and these different things that people are realizing, hey, there's way more to this. Yeah, and it is, some people as a result are going back to the churches, and other people are choosing to leave the church because they're not feeling the connection. They're not getting the answers they're looking for there. So they're seeking them elsewhere. And it's like, yeah, and when we're in the middle when you're in the middle of the bubble, you can't see the whole picture. So I think there's going to be, yeah, I'm looking forward to crossing over where I can, and going back to that garden and maybe even beyond. where I'm swimming in space again and going into what some people were, and I think it's what some people refer to as the void. I think swimming in space is just the best way I know how to explain it. Where there was no judgment, there was just complete acceptance and complete love.
You did have a lovely experience, that is for sure. When you were sitting in these classrooms, there were students, you were sitting in the classroom, right? And there
Mhm.
was like religious figures teaching, and could you get a sense of what they were teaching?
Other than it seemed to be mostly about energy of what I remember, and it's like, and and I know one of the things I've done through, I've been trained in a few different, what are referred to as energetic healing modalities like Reiki and electromagnetic field balancings and some different, and there's a whole bunch of other ones out there too. So so it felt kind of similar to that. Yeah, and people can literally just start by taking two hands and just kind of imagine creating a ball of energy and just playing with that and see what it feels like. And then eventually it almost gets where you can't get your hands any closer together because there just feels like so much energy there. And then, finding it, sharing that with another person that needs healing or pulling that into your own body for, healing yourself. And, and it may be a physical healing that you're allowed to experience, but maybe it's a spiritual healing as well.
So everyone has the ability to develop these gifts.
I think so. From what I've experienced and what I've been shown, we all have that. And and I think one of the things that so many of us are going to be experiencing is like awakening of more senses because what's been for so many years has been referred to as junk DNA. I don't think it's junk. I think it's DNA that's been like turned off. And it's like as we go through the spiritual awakening, it's like that DNA is going to get turned back on, and we're going to have so many more senses and abilities. And so we're going to have to go through an adjustment period of relearning how to use these abilities.
Do you think that's connected to the portion of the brain we don't use? What is it? I can't
Yes,
remember exactly the
definitely.
percentage, but they say
Hmm.
we use hardly any of our brain. So,
Yeah.
well, that's amazing. I'm ready for that, for us to
Me too.
to
I was
learn
like,
how to
I'm
live our,
excited about it.
yeah, it's very exciting to live our fullest and best lives and have
Mm-hmm.
the gifts that we are blessed with in our DNA and our brain. Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. Has this changed the way that you look at death?
I almost thinking, because like now both of my parents have passed. I think of it's like they're in another room that we're just not able to communicate because there's not like a doorway where we can walk through and communicate with them. I like to think there's a window. But and I think, eventually we will be able to, as we more of our abilities wake up and and there are people out there that we know of as, mediums that are able to communicate. Because that's another sense that I think that many of us, will eventually be able to use.
And why do you think this experience, or your both of your experiences, happened to you in particular? Do you think there's a reason you had a plan for it?
Sometimes, some days I'm not so sure about that, and other days, it's maybe just because then, that one grandmother that was at my bedside, she allowed me to read a lot of different books from her personal library about other faiths as I grew up, and that I think that was very helpful for me, and I think was what kind of helped lead me down the path to be able to be more open-minded and more understanding, but also more curious. And I think that's what a lot of us have forgotten how to be as curious.
You have some beautiful art behind you. Is that your work?
Yes, it is. Yeah, and that's a lot of things that I see in meditation. I have this, yeah, just inspired by different things, been inspired by sacred, what's called sacred geometry, which is a whole nother study that, path people can go down. But some of his things I see in meditation or dream state that I've tried in the best way I know how, try to portray, and put in, physical form of what I see. And sometimes I do better than others.
Well, we're human having a human experience, so that is
Yes.
completely acceptable and expected. One over, I guess, over your, maybe it would be your left shoulder. It looks like a mask and maybe
Um,
some chakra symbols. Can you tell me? Oh,
that is exactly what it is. Yeah, it's a porcelain mask that's attached and then stones for each one of the chakras. And then if you actually look inside the eyes, I, I don't, I actually have a little, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. There's a little light in there, a little, battery powered light that, and then there's crystals inside as well.
wow. That's stunning.
I don't know how well you can see that,
I can't see the
but
light, but I can imagine how amazing
mm,
that would be.
there's just, because I took this to a show once, so it's got some fuzzies on it. So I'm picking those off, but yes, and I love to work with the stones. That's because they hold different frequencies and different energies too, and I think of them as like being lenses for those different, and so they can help us focus those different types of energies to assist us in different ways. And
Mm.
there's tons of books out there to help you with, different crystal Bibles and different things to help you understand the stones and what energies they hold.
You're very talented, by the way. I love your art. It's beautiful.
Thank you. You know, the one thing I hope that other people really would start doing in their own spiritual journey is meditating. Yeah, even if it's just for 5 or 10 minutes a day, taking that time to, yeah, to listen. Yeah, because so many times, like in our conversations, we're thinking about what we're going to say next, and we don't always take the time to fully listen. And that's really what meditation is. And there's multiple different ways to meditate. There's guided meditations, there's walking meditations, there is sitting in silence. Yeah, and it's not about trying to become Buddha, for example. That's because that's who a lot of people associate with meditation. It's just taking the time to listen and, sometimes just getting to know yourself on a deeper level. And I think that's one of the most healing things that we can do.
Meditation is something that is so frequently recommended to help people become
Mhm,
uh, healed or to develop gifts or whatever reasons, just
mhm.
to connect
Even if
with
it's
the
just to
divine.
become a better person.
Yeah. And what kind of meditation do you do?
And as the weather gets warmer, I do walking meditations. I love to, like I have a park just a couple blocks from my house, and really just kind of, and I don't wear the headphones, like so many people I see in the park, and just truly listen to nature, listen to the wind and the trees and the birds and the squirrels running around, listening to the children's laughter as they play in the park. Listening to things that are joyful. When the weather is, cold or not cooperating, I might just, listen to different frequency music. I particularly enjoy listening to what's called the Solfeggio frequency music, which, can find a lot of it on YouTube, to be honest. Um, it's, and that's a whole nother study. Um, I'll just say this, it's the 369 that Nikolai Tesla used in his work. He's one of his quotes was, if we understood 3, 6, and 9, we'd understand the universe. So, how we tune our musical instruments, can make a huge difference.
If my viewers wanted to find you to check out your art, or we'll link a link for your book, but they wanted to ask more questions or get in touch with you, how can they find you?
The easiest way is my website, which is susanwalterart.com. And I am on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and and YouTube, and I do have a YouTube channel as well.
Perfect. I'll link your website down below as well so people can just click on that. And do you have any last words of wisdom for my viewers?
Be more curious, read more, listen, find new teachers, listen to more podcasts, just become more curious, learn more. I think there's so much more to our world.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much, Susan, for being my guest. It really has been an honor. I've learned so much from you, and I think you're very talented and have so much to offer the world.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here and supporting my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing if you enjoy near-death experiences and other spiritually transformative stories. It helps the algorithm know that this information is useful and push it out to more people. And that's the goal, to get as many people to know that we are eternal spiritual beings and that we never die. Our bodies might die, but our essence will never die. And I want people to live with less fear. Let's all spread the word. Like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that little notification bell so you get all the notifications when my videos post. Thank you for all of your support. I'm sending love to you.